Great. Hi. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight for this special report back event on the How We Win conference that the DSA Fund hosted in June. A big thank you to all our supporters here tonight, both those of you who are already friends of the fund, and welcome to any of you who are not yet friends of the fund, but don't worry, you will have a chance to become a friend of the fund tonight. But genuinely, we are really excited. I'm personally very excited to be able to share what the event was like, what this conference was like. That was really a first of its kind in a generation in terms of how large this gathering of elected officials was from across the country. We're going to have a chance to hear from several elected officials who attended the event tonight, as well as from core organizers of the conference who've worked on building it over the past year or so. If you have any questions over the course of tonight's program in the next hour, feel free to use, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom window. You can type in any question there. Later in the evening, toward the end of the program, we will address any of the questions we have time for during the event, and we'll definitely make sure to follow up for any questions we don't have time to address in our time here together tonight. But please do use the Q&A box. I am Sunshine Rhiannon Letter. I'm Deputy Director of the DSA Fund, and over the past year, I've really had the genuine opportunity to work with folks on this call to plan and organize this summer's conference, which was called How We Win, the Democratic Socialist Policy Agenda in Office. We brought together elected officials and their staff from around the country. And tonight, of course, we're bringing everyone on this call together, both on our panel and in the audience, to learn about what happened, hear about it, and discuss what we're thinking of and looking forward to building in the future. So tonight, we'll have the folks you see on the slide here addressing all of us in regards to their part in June's conference. And so also so that folks know, because it's not always clear for all of us, the DSA Fund is the 501c3 charitable educational sister organization of DSA. And our role is to work to spread democratic socialist ideas, to amplify our successes as a movement and in the world, and also to build and strengthen the movement for democratic socialism through political education and the exchange of ideas and sharing of resources. So thanks again to the financial support of so many supporters of the fund. We, along with both The Nation and Jacobin Magazine, convened this conference in June. And with your help, it won't be the last. It really was proved to be such a needed event. So many of the attendees reported that back to us, and you'll hear more about that tonight. And, you know, we'll be talking about how it came to happen, what happened there, and what's coming next. So without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker tonight, David Duhalde. David Duhalde is a longtime Democratic Socialist activist, starting as a campus activist with what is now called Young Democratic Socialists of America. Since then, he has served as DSA's national youth organizer, as well as deputy director. Duhalde has also served as political director of the Bernie Sanders-inspired Our Revolution, and David now currently serves as the chair of the DSA Fund. So David, I will throw it to you.
Great, thank you so much, Sunshine. And thank you everyone who came tonight, and a special gratitude to our speakers. I'm gonna try to speak a little loudly because I'm having some sound trouble. So apologies in advance there. So I just want to talk a little bit about how this event came to be. So when I was political director of Our Revolution in our country's capital, I would see lots of leftist Pauls coming to DC for conferences. And I'd ask myself, where's the one for Berniecrats? Where's the event for Democratic Socialists? After talking with Chris Radio, who's now the vice chair of the DSA Fund, about the work that she did as a DSA staffer to help advance public policy in the 1990s, like helping start the Congressional Progressive Caucus, it dawned on me that why couldn't the DSA fund fill a void that exists in today's democratic socialist political space? So first of all, DSA is amazing. It's amazing at getting nearly 200 socialists elected across the country, but still in the early stages of governance. So debates around governance in DSA helped me realize the fund could be a convening and neutral space to discuss democratic socialist public policy and making the lives of working people better. But to do this, we began a How We Win series that began as a webinar that connected DSA chapter activists, grassroots groups and nonprofits, and elected socialists like the ones you'll hear from today to talk about their successes and occasional failures in making change through laws and referenda in areas such as workers' rights and housing. And then we teamed up with Jacobin and eventually the Nation to put off this amazing in-person event you're going to hear about, also called How We Win. And I'm going to hand it back to Sunshine to go so we can go further into the amazing work and what that happen and will happen.
Thank you so much, David. And thanks for all your work on bringing this event together. Let's now go to a quick 1-minute roundup of what happened at the conference. We put together a little 1-minute video so you can directly see some imagery and see what the conference was like. Great. Thank you so much for that video, Emma. I hope it gave folks a little sense just from that little bit of imagery of what went on over the weekend in June. I'm next going to go to some of our elected officials who you saw in those photos who were there, starting with Commissioner Anthony Joel Quezada, who attended the conference and to share his kind of takeaways and what the conference meant to him. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Can hear you great, thanks.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction, Sunshine, and it's great to be with you all this evening. So, we had a couple questions that we were prompted with for tonight's conversation. And so some of the experiences that I took away from this conference and what I got out of it was that it felt like a family reunion, to be honest, to be meeting with comrades from all over the country. It really felt like meeting long distance relatives. Some folks you knew of, some folks you had no idea that they were elected socialists in their little towns or communities. It was really exciting to learn about the different varying democratic socialist organizing projects and policy proposals that have been successfully passed, or as previously mentioned, not passed, but are being percolated. And what I got out of the conference were different insights and perspectives on organizing tactics and strategies that were implemented during policy campaigns. And this is really important as someone who is a freshman, legislator like myself. It was also really empowering to be part of the largest convening of elected socialists in decades, right? As you saw in the video and in the beginning of the program, there was a large picture that we took as a group photo, which was really exciting. I remember we got together, we even sang a little bit of Solidarity Forever, and it really felt like we were doing something historic. And again, it was just really important. I think it's exactly what we need to be doing as elected socialists, to be coming together, to be learning, to be empowering one another so that we can build a broader coordinated national movement. Some of the connections that I made at this conference was that I've when I was elected, I felt like I am the only socialist commissioner in my county, but at this conference, I was able to meet other socialist commissioners, specifically in Allegheny County in Pennsylvania. And that was just really cool to learn about the work that they're doing and how they are organizing in their communities. And as previously mentioned, or in that slideshow, we have a group chat. And it's been really cool to just learn about the different types of work that people are doing and seeing their achievements. Lastly, some of the things that I hope to get out of this work in the future is organizing annual conferences. I think this is really, really beneficial. I would hope that we could have a conference longer than 2 days so that we can really get into the nitty-gritty of some of these policy orientations or proposals, and so that we can have more breakout sessions and more social space to get to learn from one another. I hope it could also be a space where we can develop and propose coordinated legislation or resolutions. I think we're in a really unique moment right now nationally where we have so many socialists that are elected. And I think it's incumbent upon us to figure out how we coordinate policy moving forward together. And then I also think we should incorporate some leadership development sessions, but from a socialist orientation. A lot of us are learning about the work either alone or maybe it's some people, but we have a large family of socialists nationally, and we really need to be investing in one another as leaders, as legislators, and as organizers. But I do think, and I do know that this conference was an amazing step and a historic step forward for our movement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And we actually went by his bio on his slide really quickly, so I am going to take a moment to let you all know a little bit more about the commissioner. Commissioner Anthony Quesada represents the northwest side of Chicago. He is the first socialist elected to the Cook County Board of Commissioners. Congratulations. And he's also the youngest commissioner in the county history and serves as the vice chair of the county's labor committee. So apologies that went by really quickly. I want to make sure people have your context. And now I will turn to our next elected official who's joining us tonight, Senator Nikhil Saval, who is a father, husband, writer, and organizer representing the 1st Senate District in the Pennsylvania legislature, where he serves as Democratic chair of the Senate's Urban Affairs and Housing Committee and chair of the Senate's Philadelphia delegation. He is the first socialist elected official to the Pennsylvania Senate. So thank you for joining us, Nikhil, and please take it away.
Thank you so much, Sunshine. I really just loved that presentation from my comrade, Commissioner Quesada. That was really exciting. So thank you so much to the organizers of the DSA Fund and all the supporters gathered here for this call. As has sort of been alluded to already, being a socialist in the United States, or a self-described democratic socialist, as the newspapers often like to put it, has not always been a way to enjoy a robust social life in politics. A combination of social transformation and dogged principled organizing has changed that, though, such that there are now hundreds of socialist elected officials, to say nothing of the thousands of self-described democratic socialist members of organizations such as DSA, spanning the United States. But there are very few guidelines for living and working as a socialist elected official in the present. The likelihood also is that no matter where you are, is that there's sometimes very few others in one's immediate vicinity to share experiences and ideas and policies with. And so this is one of many reasons that I'm grateful for being able to have attended DSA Fund's How We Win conference. The sheer presence of many others who had gone through similar trajectories and transformations, and who found themselves in the thrilling but also precarious and unfamiliar position of government, was energizing in itself. But in particular, I learned from so many others what distinguished socialism in power, what could distinguish it, and what I and others could strive towards. Panels showed the ways, for example, that socialists have built power with the organized building trades in Chicago, despite initially being on opposite sides. The way that socialists in New York used a New Deal era public power authority to force the state to build renewable energy. Even better, I learned from others how they engaged their districts in ways that were unique to the ethos of socialism. The way that some, for example, ran canvases with their DSA chapters to survey their constituents on how they envisioned public safety. But best of all, I learned how people stuck together. I learned, in other words, about solidarity. Being in elected office is intellectually rewarding and a beautiful pretext for meeting hundreds, even thousands of extraordinary people and finding ways to work with them to win what the working class deserves. But it is also stressful, exhausting, and laden with minefields that threaten one's psychic state all the time. It is being part of a system that is sometimes designed to isolate you, in particular, to isolate you, a socialist in particular, from the collective power, the comradeship that we are all trying to build. I learned from so many others how common this experience was and the various means that people found to counter it. Ultimately, we have to count on ourselves and we have to stay together. Since the conference, many of us have continued to stay in touch, have visited and continue to learn from each other to understand, for example, how since the conference, just in the last month or two, socialist elected officials in Montgomery County, Maryland, managed to pass a model rent stabilization measure and have collectively worked to develop the resources, psychological and otherwise, to support each other. How we win is ultimately how much we can maintain and grow this network. And to that end, I think the work of the DSA Fund and planning events of this kind is essential. This is also why I myself have pledged to raise $1,000 for the DSA Fund and become a friend of the fund. I know how important the work is, and I know how much it needs to grow. As the saying goes, socialist cash takes out capitalist trash. And I'm grateful again for what the DSA Fund has given me so far. And I'm excited with all of you to give back and to grow the work. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Nikhil. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about the conference and what's been happening since the conference. And thank you for making a pledge to help raise $1,000 this year for the DSA Fund's efforts in this whole area. So thank you so much. I'm now also going to go to our next elected official, Representative Elizabeth Epps. Representative Elizabeth Epps is an abolitionist and a legislature first elected to the Colorado General Assembly in 2022. And since January of this year, she has represented Denver in Colorado's House of Representatives, where she serves on the Judiciary, State, Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs, and Statutory Revision Committees. She is active with the Black and LGBTQ caucuses and is looking forward to a proper socialist caucus in the Colorado House as well. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sunshine, and all. I appreciate the opportunity to be invited and really deeply appreciated the time in DC. We were asked to share what were our experiences in DC and what did we get out of it. And I, as glad as I am to accept the invitation to come and share, I always sort of pause when I'm invited to spaces like this because I don't feel like I'm the most optimistic person around or the most positive one, and struggle with that tension versus being honest. But the full honest answer about what I got out of DC is that it was worth it. I was really hesitant about, like, it's quite a trek, respectfully, from Colorado to DC. And so anytime I'm asked, I'm like, could this have been a Zoom, right? Might this have been a phone call? Might this have been a really good online workshop? And the fact is, none of those would have worked. We needed to be there in person, and that was immediately obvious. And I just like the depth of my gratitude for that, right? The ability to be brought together in person. Some highlights that you saw in the video were ones that were heavy for me. Representative Cori Bush being there, I still feel like she was there to talk to me, so I'm not really sure why everybody else was in the room, because she was clearly talking to me and there were just other people allowed to be a part of our conversation. But I mean that actually quite literally. I was struggling in many ways, and not in terms of the objective successes, right? They ranked our effectiveness as legislators, nonsense of hierarchies. In that way, I'm doing just fine, but my spirit just was really, really crushed this session. And to be in the company of people who understood it, where I didn't have to apologize for, my ridiculous positions, like thinking people should be allowed to have housing and stuff like that, meant a lot. I also wanted to mention political education. I've heard it mentioned sort of in passing and quickly, but Colorado is newer to this space. And here I mean, as opposed to, we don't have sewer socialists and we don't have the publicly known history of, I call them known socialists, right? Surely there've been some in office here. We just have not figured out who they've been. And so for me, not just education around ideas and policy items, but how to talk to my colleagues about it, how to talk to community about it, that came up naturally in our time together. Connections, I want to note two connections that happened for me in in that weekend that were particularly important. One is to be around other Black women who are fighting for the things I want. Of course, I'm glad to be there with all of my folks, but that is I almost like didn't even realize until being there how much I'd missed that. And in my day job at the Capitol here that I'm blessed to have, that's something that's missing. So selfishly, that was just really filling to be reminded that I'm not the only one. The other, and this is kind of narrower, but is Representative Mabry, who was the other part of the Colorado delegation. I did not realize, sound like every other word is I didn't realize, until I got there, we had been just fighting, right? It's just, you all know it, right? You all understand it, but have been fighting so hard. We were actually physically separated. They didn't allow us to sit near each other on the floor of the at the General Assembly. And to be able to be with him in a space where we were with colleagues and weren't in a moment of tension, it was really great to have that space, and this was fully facilitated by this opportunity. In terms of hopes for the future, there's a couple things that stand out to me. One is I think about just even the way we use the word agenda, right? Our own agenda and policy agenda. A criticism that has been hurled against me in my time in this work has been, right, that I have an agenda. And whenever I hear that, I think to myself, like, don't you? Why don't you? You should have an agenda too. And being able to narrow and fine tune and strategize around what that means and coming for our things and to claim them unapologetically is something that this space helped facilitate. Also a personal, in addition to, I did sign up earlier to be a friend of the fund, so that one I'm going to check off on my to-do list. We'll do that and we'll keep doing that work. But in terms of a hope, I am putting into myself the practical goal of when we can come back together, because I'm just speaking into existence that this is going to happen. There are 3 current members of our General Assembly who are Dem socialists, and we were too gentle on our 3rd favorite person and not bringing her along. So we're going to do that, and God willing, and the creek don't rise, have a couple more with us as well. So I want to see that for Colorado, and I really want the opportunity to continue to amplify successes. I feel like in this work, I know that I suffer from success amnesia, right? Because when something is accomplished, all I'm thinking about is what else is there to do, and so the opportunity to do that together is important. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you so much. Everything that's been said so far has really moved me, and I'll just share quickly that I was also very moved that weekend by, I just want to underscore and echo everything that Representative Epps just shared. I was moved to see how much it meant to folks to be together, to be able to connect in person. And also, as she said, that there were a bunch of folks from like every different state and city that was there. We had over 18 states represented, many different cities, towns, counties, regions, and folks were like, oh my gosh, so-and-so who couldn't make it this time, they have to be here next time. I have to make sure they come next time. This is so important. This is so important. So just echoing that we were hearing similar things from other folks in the room too. So, that's all very exciting, obviously, to get that kind of feedback. And now I will turn it to our 4th elected official here with us tonight. Council member Robin Wansley, who is an independent Democratic Socialist representing Minneapolis's Ward 2. She serves on its city council and is a member of Twin Cities DSA as well. And Council member Wansley, I will turn it to you to share your thoughts as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Sunshine. And I've had the opportunity to come on several How We Win events hosted by DSA Fund. And I'm so grateful to be able to speak to you all again about the transformative experience that all of us just discussed, that we participated in this past June. As what was highlighted was definitely a history-making event, the largest socialist gathering in a couple of decades. And that's significant considering the Red Scare era that dominated the 80s and, prior to Bernie Sanders, who we got a chance to also listen to during the conference. Really, socialism was was a derogatory word or political affiliation. And at that moment, with Bernie Sanders opening up the doors for a political revolution that I think all of us have embraced and why we decided to run for office. And it's really a full embodiment of the how we win mantra, because it's not about how we win for ourselves as individuals, is how do we advance struggles that working class people are leading from. At that time, it was the fight for 15. Now it should be the fight for 30. And now, as you mentioned, around rent control, during our time there, we also talked about the numerous militant labor struggles that are happening all across the country and the ways that we are using our office to amplify those struggles and to advance those campaigns and win concessions. We did a lot of exchanging around how DSA is showing up for Starbucks workers, and how we can be sharing tips of passing resolutions, like we did here in Minneapolis. Same for what was going to be the largest UPS strike in the history of our country. We were gearing up and exchanging tips how we're going to do that work of supporting drivers, and also here that we get to do in Minneapolis with Thursday, us introducing, and knock on wood, I'm claiming it, passing some of the strongest protections, worker protections for Uber and Lyft drivers in the country. I got the opportunity to learn so much from my fellow colleagues who are taking on these numerous fights and challenging, corporate lobbyists and corporations that constantly wreak havoc on working class people's lives. And they put a lot of their energy into making sure that political systems like the ones that we inhabit are entrenched with representatives that are all about the status quo and are all about protecting profits. So as some of my fellow socialist colleagues and peers have shared today, How We Win really helped to solidify to us, I think, who were present, that we are not a political minority, even though the overwhelming cash flow that comes from corporate dollars, or even the conversation that's happening around nationally around the Trump right-wing movement that's still raging under DeSantis, and basically a fascist movement, and the moderate Democratic establishment, how they're trying to hold on. Oftentimes it feels like, where does socialism and where does working class politics really fit into a larger political conversation? All of us spent that weekend really diving into that, as some of my colleagues mentioned, through the panels, through the informal conversations where we got to debate who mayor is actually worse. I'm going to claim number one, or Mayor Fry, Chicago. You had a close second, but you ousted yours with Lori Lightfoot. And how we're all leading the change to fight back against the climate crises that are decimating our communities, like we are seeing taking place in Maui. So that is really, to me, the essence and the beauty of what happened that weekend. It's about, how do we win on behalf of working class people? How do we continue to use our offices to show that working class people, you are actually the ones in control of our society. You are the ones who can tell corporations through collective action that you will not continue to profit off of our despair. So these are the type of events and activities, in addition to the How We Win series that they do throughout the year, that allows us to continue to grow our forces, both within political institutions, but outside, because we can't do this work of building a socialist movement without making sure that working class people are in the driving seat of that movement. So again, thank you so much. I'm also going to make the pledge to also donate so we can continue doing this work together and continue to win that socialist vision that all of us are building towards, whether you're in a metropolitan city or in a town of 2,500 or 500. We all recognize that we will not be able to have another 5 decades, 8 decades on this earth without a complete socio-economic transformation of our political and economic system. And that is what socialism gives us a pathway to accomplish, that overturn, that transformation. So thank you all. And I look forward to building with you all as we continue to win.
Thank you so much, Robin. Also very inspired just hearing your words. And yeah, I will also add and underscore that we had these amazing sessions where we got to hear from each elected officials, got to hear from other elected officials, as well as union organizers and other folks who were present at the conference around labor, around Democratic Socialists working with labor. climate action, as Robin was saying as well, housing, so we had all these sessions and also then working together as socialists in office. So, and some that I'm probably failing to mention right now, but these were really rich, engaged, discussions and conversations and sharing of strategy and wins and losses and how did you do that and how do we do this and oh, I can't believe you did that. We should learn how to do that. And like at the end of the labor session, which I was part of, people didn't want to leave the room, so there's definitely, it was just clear that there was so much more room for more of this to occur that people can really benefit from. And to that, closing on that point, for all of the elected officials, thank you all so much for sharing from your experience. And now I'm going to turn it over to Maria Svart. Maria Svart is a former co-chair of the Young Democratic Socialists of America, and also longtime national director of DSA, alongside her role as the executive director of the DSA Fund. Prior to joining DSA and Fund as staff, she was a rank and file union activist and an organizer for 8 years. Now that we've heard from our panel of elected officials about the impact of this project for them, we'll hear from Maria about the future of this work and what it might look like at the DSA Fund. And so Maria, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sunshine, and welcome everyone. It's so exciting to see you tonight. I'm going to summarize some of the key themes that we heard tonight about why this gathering is so critical. There are 3 really important points. The first is visibility. A lot of folks didn't realize how many Democratic Socialist elected officials there are. 10 years ago, Democratic Socialist ideas were completely off the table, and we are now impossible to ignore. We can't really take credit for the crumbling of the neoliberal consensus, but we have helped insert new ideas. So ideas, Democratic Socialist ideas, more radical ideas are now more broadly understood in the United States, and we're really piercing the hegemonic ideas that have been dominating political discourse for so long. And of course, now they are trying to push us back off of the stage, and that's one reason we held this conference. Another is solidarity. Good ideas are not enough. Camaraderie is important, as senators have all talked about. Capitalism pits us against each other, isolates us. Anybody who's in office, if you put yourself in their shoes, you're alone. The Republicans are demonizing you. The Democrats are probably attacking you. Your constituents might be attacking you because they're desperate under capitalism. And the ruling class is trying to buy you off. So you're struggling alone, and this conference really brought people together. And I can't say how many people came to me during the course of the weekend and said, I needed this so bad. This came at a very important time for me because people were feeling so isolated. So it's not just sharing policy ideas and strategies and organizing innovations. It's also literally the moral support of having each other and having this network. So that's also critically important. And then the third is power comes from organized people. We're socialists, we understand this. And this conference built the kind of relationships that will be necessary to sustain what's coming ahead, and to build a national network of Democratic Socialist elected officials and their staff, which was an important part of the conference. And we're really creating a space where people can work on coordinated policy pushes, or basically presenting a united front and being able to come and build the kind of partnerships that we're going to need. So what's next? Keeping in mind, of course, that we are not the socialist ALEC. The fund is small. Unlike a lot of 501c4s and their sister 501c3s, we do not have a lot of resources. We're dwarfed by the resources of the DSA, but we think there's an important role for bringing people together and promoting educational programming. And our ambitious plan is to continue to bring people together. So the most important thing that socialists can do is organize. And what we want to do is support elected officials to learn how to build power with their constituents, and learn from each other to do that. A lot of this is going to be online. We are going to continue the webinar series, How We Win. And again, that talks about how do we win specific policy fights and the inside-outside organizing that usually takes, whether it's inside the legislative body and outside in the streets, or whether it's inside the Democratic Party and outside, or whatever kind of nuanced organizing strategy needs to take place. How do we win policies that impact masses of working class people? And how do we combat the kind of isolation that you learn when there's a technocratic approach to governing? So we want to counter that. We want to talk about building power together. We also want to do follow-up conversations that are less kind of panelist oriented and more just bringing together the folks that attended the conference and the folks that couldn't make it, whether it's on the basis of the kind of policy that they're trying to pursue, or they're in a similar political environment, in a shared region, et cetera, or the same level of government. We really want to continue to build like interconnecting networks of folks, because if you're in Tennessee or Montana at the state versus the city level, you're going to have a different set of challenges. The other thing we want to do is to continue to bring together the staff, much like we brought together the elected officials to share best practices, policy ideas, how to be maximally effective in that role, and organize constituents as a socialist. We also want to do more in-person gatherings. Obviously, that is a challenge financially. It's a big ticket item. Whether we do this on a regional basis or additional national gatherings, it remains to be seen, and we're starting to think about what's the most strategic way for us to pursue this strategy. But that is absolutely one of the most important aspects of this event that made it successful, is the in-person relationships that people were able to build. And I feel those summarize what we want to do. We want to move policy and we want to build working class power outside of politics so that we can exert it inside politics. And those are the ways that we're going to pursue it. Before we talk about the other way to build power, which is organized money, I wanted to see if anybody has questions that they would like to ask. If you navigate down to the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A box you can click on and ask a question. And the first thing that I want to ask is actually, I want to throw a question open to everybody on the panel and give folks a second to put your questions in the Q&A box. My question is, why did being together with Democratic Socialist elected officials specifically, how did that make this event different? And anybody can jump on to answer that one.
I'll offer something there. To me, that one feels like a bit of a like res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. Like we are so different and set apart. It was necessary. But in Colorado, you alluded to this with the differences in our respective places. In Colorado, we are relatively blessed, in lots of air quotes, to not be fighting some of the most overt and difficult battles of that some of my folks, where I come from the American South originally, right, that are folks are bravely carrying there. And so what that means is, on paper, we should be able to do all of the things here, right? We should be able to get all of the things and pay our teachers and support our workers and have healthcare. And what is missing, right, it doesn't have to be people who necessarily all are Dem socialists, but who are fighting for those ideals. And so I felt very lost here in Colorado, I mean, and it was the opposite of that, to get to be in the company of folks who are lifting up those ideals. And also, just seriously, full transparency, to be around folks who've been doing it as Dem socialists for so much longer than both I have, and then we have been doing it in Colorado. It makes it seem possible. It makes me look forward to being an elder in this work. It makes me look forward to getting to be a mentor to the next folks coming up to take my job, right?
I echo a lot of what Representative Epps says, and I'm moved once again because I was at the conference by this setting. I also would just say, it isn't always obvious. I think we all have, as socialists, I think we know that there's a difference in what we believe and what we do and think and how we organize and what the sources of power are and how we use that power. But within the system that we have chosen to be part of, there's something that has to be different in methods and also what we propose and what we do with it, and so learning from other people what is distinct about socialist policy, what is distinct about socialist organizing, what is distinctly socialist about how you serve your constituents in your district, how do you do constituent services differently, maybe you serve people, but in what way are you also empowering people? These are all questions that I think we kept asking each other and ourselves and learning, because we are learning, right? We're learning about this experience and growing of being in power. And I learned so much from so many people and am continuing to do so. I found that the distinctiveness of the socialist project, I think, really became highlighted, and the various ways that we could get there.
I could jump in terms of some of the ways in which I felt being in company with other democratic socialists was particularly transformative. And I think, some of my fellow colleagues have shared this in the day-to-day work, because right now in Minneapolis, we only have 3 democratic socialists. I'm the only independent, but come in a few months, my team has been working very hard to expand that number. So I'm really excited to have a socialist majority and experience the Chicago miracle here in Minneapolis. We've seen it happen for them. We know it can happen for us too. But in light of that, majority of my colleagues, quote unquote, identify as Democrats. And what I will say about a traditional Democratic orientation when it comes to critical issues like homelessness or climate change, economic development, there is a complete disdain and distrust of working class people. Constantly in my work, where I'm always like, those are my best allies. Like, let's figure out how to pack the chambers. Let's figure out how to expand opportunities for public comment. We're debating policies that actually can uplift people's material conditions. Let's involve working class people proactively in decision-making and creating a co-governance model that's actually rooted in participatory decision-making, which I think is very much a critical value of a socialist political discourse or orientation. Many of my colleagues who identify politically as just, regular old Democrats are like, why? They're always pushing back when they're like, why do we need to pack the chambers? Let's take care of these discussions or decisions behind closed doors. Let's not bring anything up for a vote that's going to be contentious. And as a socialist, I think your best allies, again, your biggest strength is organized power. Does that mean our jobs are a little bit more challenging? Because that means we have to be in the field. We have to be protecting and nurturing those relationships with social movements, as what was also discussed in our labor panel. That also means working with unions, which we know has that takes a particular level of TLC. So that means we really have to be building our relationships and figuring out ways to amplify the struggles on the ground, and navigate all the interpersonal dynamics and challenges that comes with broad coalition building. And many of my colleagues don't understand that. So when I came to the conference and I was talking, about a number of things, I remember speaking with Anthony and my staff member around homelessness and how we are getting our butts kicked on the left when it comes to this. And right now, the normal disposition or accepted disposition towards this is evictions. We're talking about inhumane evictions, and hearing how Anthony, while as a staff member, was working in Carlos, Alderman Carlos' office, how they were able to work with their constituents to build a homeless defense team, like as a official committee within his office. And they were able to do that work over a period of time to bring, regular residents who were probably anti-homeless, were all about evictions, and were able to get them to build relationships with unhoused residents. And actually to the point where they built this coalition where those residents who were out here being like, evict, we don't want this problem, became their biggest. We're talking about our unsheltered relatives, their biggest champions. They were putting their bodies on the line while they had to move to different sites, and force city and other local governments to say that you need to invest to make sure these people get long-term housing. And while you're doing that, you need to also make sure they're getting the wraparound social services that they need so that they can maintain stability once they get access to these resources. My team was blown away that that was even something possible. And seeing, again, building the bridges with often, constituencies that we're often seeing being pulled in oppositional ways, or being used to be pitted against a different constituency or community. It was really beautiful to see, like, both Carlo and Anthony said, no, we leaned into that. We did that hard work. And that is really what we get to do in these roles. And I don't get to be exposed to that for most of my colleagues. They're not thinking that. They just cave to the cause and call police up and say, go evict that unhoused person. So that just gave me a whole new way of envisioning how we use this thing that we fought so hard for to get into, of this position of being in a political office or a public official seat, and really how we're able to just build those bridges and build coalitions that we often think are impossible. So that's what that weekend meant for me, even just around a critical issue like homelessness.
Yeah, and then lastly, I'll kind of build off of that. Thank you, Robin, for bringing up that story. I think ultimately what we all felt really comfortable with was really being able to be radical, right? To actually say, we don't accept capitalism, we don't accept this failed system, and we don't accept just building solutions within the confines of this broken system. We need to be building outside of it. We need to be finding other solutions. We need to be building other solutions with organized people. And that story that Robin explained is a story that, it's not a tactic that I would share with, a liberal or neoliberal, because they'd be like, dang, I should have called the police on you, or we should have called the state police on you. But like, we were doing things that we were told that we shouldn't do, but we were like, no, we're going to humanize people. We're going to build real solutions, and we're going to bring people together. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the power of organized people resisted the power of the state. And we were able to defend people. We were able to humanize the situation, and we were able to house over 30 people instead of having them policed and having their property, their personal property, destroyed. We said, we will not allow that in our community. And in other communities in the city of Chicago where people are being displaced, they don't have the antidote of people power, and we are building it here. And it's the socialists that are leading that charge. And that's a very important lesson for us to be teaching other socialists if we are to truly start waging a war against poverty and not the poor, and to start waging war on fossil fuel industries and climate change, and not on communities that are most vulnerable. So it is truly socialists, as we all know, that are the transformational thinkers of our time, that are really putting out the real political alternatives and visions that people need materially to have a better life and a just life. And so being able to create a space where we can feel safe, where we can feel comfortable to conspire and to think outside the box is what's needed right now in this moment.
All of you are so inspiring, and there are lots of great questions in the Q&A box, but we don't have time. So we'll have to do another event like this and more of these conferences, but I'm going to hand it back to Sunshine. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Yeah, thank you all so much. It's great to get the conversation flowing like this and get everyone's input on these key questions. It's really valuable, and I appreciate it. And our final speaker tonight, because we do want to respect everyone's time, we're trying to keep this to an hour, is James Tierney. We've talked a lot tonight, of course, about the conference and the future of this work, and we haven't talked yet about the critical role that so many of you on this call and others who aren't here tonight have done to make this work possible. And we are going to need you and your friends to keep building the fund's work moving forward, and this kind of work that we're talking about tonight. So I'm going to hand it over to James Tierney next. James is a member of the DSA Fund board and a friend of the fund himself. He just completed a term serving as the treasurer for the Lincoln DSA chapter. He also sits on the Budget and Finance Committee and the Grants Committee of the DSA Fund. So James, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Sunshine, and thanks to all of the speakers for the inspiring stories of how, what we've taken from How We Win. As you've been hearing tonight, the fund thrives on our collective passion for promoting political education about democratic socialism and policy in this area. And the fund thrives not just on our passion, right, but on our tangible support. And all of our programs, including the How We Win conference that you've been hearing about tonight, it requires resources, financial, and I think more importantly, and here's the point, in terms of our relationships with all of you, right? So our impact as organizers and as a nonprofit relies on kind of consistent backing. And to achieve, our objectives, we need to ensure a steady flow of material support, but that isn't merely about kind of reaching particular financial targets. It's about recognizing the moment that we're in when, large pluralities, if not majorities of young people in particular, have positive connotations with concepts of democratic socialism and policy. And so, I think it's incumbent upon us at this time to try and build relationships that are going to be, put us in a stronger position moving forward, right? So that relationship building, I think, is at the heart of our efforts. And fundraising is crucial. I will get to that, but we equally value the connections we're making with all of you and with your connections in turn, building our community, over time. And so I want to talk with you all about Friends of the Fund, which you've heard about a couple times tonight. This is a new network of people across the USA. I think I'm probably reading from this now. All right, that's bad webinar etiquette. Sorry. It's a new network of people across the USA who commit to giving energy, time, and money to fundraising for the DSA Fund, with the goal of dramatically increasing, our movement's ability to spread ideas, share effective strategies, and bring together developing organizers. So Friends of the Fund, are supporters who commit to donate or to raise $1,000 or more for the DSA Fund each year. Personally, I think DSA Fund does super essential work, and I am committed to its mission. And so in addition to donating my time and money with board service, as well as, in our How We Win, webinar series that we've had over the last kind of year and a half or so, I've committed to also donating and to raising at the Friends of the Fund level. And I'd ask you to join me. But note what I said, right? That we welcome you to cut a check if you have the means to do so, but we all have time and energy and relationships that are important to building our capacity moving forward. And so I encourage you to think about 2, 3, 5 people in your community who support this kind of mission. Ask them to join you, to join us in pledging, in giving or in raising money, in turn for the DSA Fund to support our work ahead. And so as we conclude this call, and I'm about to, send this back to Sunshine, I want to urge those of you who are joining us tonight, and thank you for doing so, if you're not yet at this supporter level, to consider committing at the Friends of the Fund level. By doing so, you're not just kind of allocating funds or spending your time in productive ways, you're also investing in a mutual relationship with us and the broader community. And that's going to drive our mission as well as the strength of our collective organizing efforts. And your support is going to be an essential pillar in that kind of long-term vision. So thanks very much for listening to my spiel. Back to you, Sunshine.
No, thank you, James. And it's really great to hear from our board members who, I don't know if everyone knows, our board members are truly a working board. All our board members put in a lot of labor and time into, the logistics of the conference, to, being here tonight, to all kinds of work that is made possible. So thank you, James, and everyone else who really gives of their time as well as their financial resources for this work to be possible. And yeah, I just want to thank everyone all around here. It's been really great to spend this time together tonight and get to share some of these highlights with you, with folks who did have the opportunity to be there with us during that weekend. But we did want to give a sense and a flavor of how meaningful it was and how significant it was for so many folks. And thank you for making that possible. And thank you as well to our elected officials who joined us tonight for taking the time to share with us all, and also for all the amazing work you are doing out there in the world, in your communities. We know how hard it is, or we can at least only imagine how hard it is to be in office as a Democratic Socialist. So yes, we're building this work together. We can't do it without all of you who are here tonight. If you're already a friend of the fund, thank you. You'll be hearing from us more soon. If you're not already a member of a friend of the fund, please go pledge to be a friend of the fund right now. And without further ado, good night. Thank you, everyone, and solidarity.